Hi, I'm Richard Maraj, Senior Minister at Unity of Phoenix Spiritual Center, and I want to thank you for visiting our website and for tuning in to today's message. If you feel inspired by today's talk, I really encourage you to make a donation by hitting that button below and making a contribution to this ministry. It'll allow us to continue these messages online and to do the great work we do here at Unity of Phoenix, which is to inspire people to live better lives. So thanks for tuning in, thanks for your support, and we hope to see you at a Sunday real soon.
Good morning again, everyone. And a shout out to everybody who tunes in and watches us online. So I got some bad news first, and that is I will not be starting my talk by telling a joke today. However, Reverend Laurie is going to tell a joke for me. Let's hear it for Reverend Laurie.
So there's this elderly gentleman, like some of you, and he needs a new car, and he knows it'll be the last car he ever buys. And he's always wanted a red Mustang convertible with a white convertible top. So he goes down to the Ford dealer, and he makes his best deal, and they put the temporary tags on the back of the car, and they put the bill of sale in the glove compartment, and he puts the top down, and he starts the engine, and he puts his left foot on the clutch, and he goes, vroom, 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 vroom. And he goes to drive on the 101, and he's driving 65 miles an hour, the speed limit, and then 75 miles an hour, and then 80 and 90, and at 100 miles an hour, the wind blows through what's left of his hair. And he goes, oh, this car is great. And he just, 110 miles an hour, 115 miles an hour, he's loving this machine. And all of a sudden, in the rearview mirror, he sees flashing blue lights. He doesn't care. He steps on the gas. The car literally leaps forward. And in 30 seconds, he comes to himself. He goes, oh, my God, I'm going to be in so much trouble. And he slows down, and he stops on the shoulder of the road and kind of slumps down in the car. And he's sitting there waiting for the officer to get out of the patrol car. And the guy opens the door, and he steps out, and he kind of hitches up his pants. And he walks over, and he says, son, I got 30 minutes left on my shift. If you can give me a really, really good reason why you're doing 120 miles an hour on the 101, I'm going to let you go. And the guy stops for a minute, and he thinks, and he goes, well, officer, you see, it's this way. 3 years ago, my wife left me for a highway patrolman, and I was afraid you were bringing her back.
Now, she can tell a joke. She can tell a joke. So how many people have ever had an unpleasant relationship at work or some area of your life that you really wanted to get away from? Anybody ever have one? And how many people ever had a challenging or difficult situation in your life that you really wanted to avoid or escape or didn't want to have to face? Anybody? You know, sometimes life can give us challenging situations that we really don't want to deal with, that we really don't want to face or have to work through. You know, and whether it's to have a difficult conversation or whether it is to face some and deal with some abuse from the past, or whether it is to start a new career, or whether it is to set a new boundary, or whether it is to heal a relationship, whether it's to let go of something that's important to you. You know, there are many things in life that are challenging, difficult situations that come up, you know, that are important for us to face and deal with. You know, scientists have known for a long time that our brains have actually evolved with a negative bias. And it is a part of that fight or flight response in us to protect us, where we often will focus more on the things that are wrong, on the things that are dangerous, or the things that we perceive are very hard, that challenge us in some way. And sometimes a mind with that negative bias sometimes tends to overly focus on the negative, overly focus on fearful things that often stops us from doing things that are important to do, and even stops us from doing things we want to do because we find they might be a little too hard or a little bit too challenging. But the good news is that we can override those tendencies of the mind. that we can override them and choose to liberate ourselves so we can move forward to greater possibilities, to handle those difficult and challenging but important things that we need to deal with. And to me, being able to handle those graciously and spiritually will give us greater levels of joy and greater levels of fulfillment rather than avoiding them and running from them. So today is Palm Sunday. Today is the day that we honor and celebrate Jesus' triumphant entrance into Jerusalem, which was highlighted by people who were greeting and waving their palms and palm fronds and placing cloaks in front of him and singing and shouting, "Hosanna to the Son of David. Blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest." You know, Palm Sunday is really the beginning of Holy Week, and it is the single activating activity and event that sets everything into motion for Holy Week. Jesus' capture, Jesus' trial, Jesus' crucifixion, and of course the incredible, miraculous resurrection, which is the great celebration, the Holy of Holy holidays in celebrating Easter. You know, today is also the fifth of our 6-week series on the Book of Joy that we've been looking at by the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And the book is really about how do we find joy in the struggles and hardships of life? How do we find joy in the painful and difficult aspects of life? And one of the things the book says clearly is that joy is a part of our nature. You know, it's not a surprise that we call babies bundles of joy. We're all born with that spirit of joy in us. But somehow as life goes on, somehow we get a little jaded, a little disappointed and frustrated, and we sometimes have all probably had a time where we felt we've lost our joy, or we're not experiencing as much joy as we want to. And one of the things the Dalai Lama says is that most of the suffering and unhappiness in our lives is actually created by us, by the way we think, by the things that we focus on, of lack and negativity, you know, and the different hurts that we still hold on to. But he said the good news about that is if our mind is so strong it can create suffering and pain, it can also get back to our nature of joy, to our nature of being happy and fulfilled and feeling love and happiness in all areas of our lives. So what we want to do today is look at both the wisdom in the Book of Joy and the great teachings, the example of Jesus for Palm Sunday, to see how we could learn to have more joy in moving through these situations and overriding the mind that can sometimes stop us. And the thing I find really inspiring about Palm Sunday is that Jesus entered Jerusalem knowing that the Pharisees were plotting against him. You know, he still went. He knew that his life was in danger. He knew that it wouldn't be easy. He knew that people would turn against him. He knew that there'd be resistance. He knew there'd be betrayal. He knew there'd be torture, there'd be pain, there'd be death. And he also knew he would rise again. He knew that this situation would test him and stretch him and take everything he had, but he was still willing to do it, that he still chose to do it. Now, his disciples warned him he could have hidden. He didn't have to go into Jerusalem, but he knew that he was meant to go into Jerusalem. He knew that facing this thing, that moving through it would lead to something great and magnificent, not just for him, but for the world. You know, I think Jesus' example on Palm Sunday gives us an example of how we can face those not so comfortable, challenging situations that are difficult, we know, but we also know that are important and valuable to us, and that they will bring a greater good if we were to face them. And so we want to talk about the 5 things this morning about how do we override the negativity of the mind that stops us from going forward with these challenging situations, to move through them so they can lift us up and bring even greater blessings to us and the world. And the first one is forgiveness. You know, forgiveness is an amazing spiritual power that overrides the negative focus of holding on to bitterness and grudges and pain, that can liberate us, lighten us, and free us to be able to move forward in a happier, healthier way. You know, holding on to resentments literally weighs us down and stops us from experiencing levels of joy and levels of peace. And the fact is, sometimes some really difficult things happen to us in life. things that are unfair, if experiencing betrayal, experiencing all levels of injustice and anger. You know, Anthony Ray Hinton spent 30 years in prison in Alabama for a crime he did not commit. Finally, in 2015, after serving 30 full years, the Supreme Court had a ruling that freed him because there wasn't evidence that he actually did it. And in an interview in 60 Minutes, he was asked about how he could forgive the people for this injustice that robbed him of 30 years of his life. And here's what he said: "Unforgiveness robs us of our ability to enjoy and appreciate our life. Because we are trapped in a part of us that is so filled with anger and bitterness. Forgiveness actually allows us to move beyond the past and appreciate the present, including drops of rain falling on our face." One of the things, he didn't have any rain fall on his face for 30 years, so first time, he felt that was a great, great blessing. But the thing I love about that is that there's the truth. Forgiveness is the only thing that can heal our hurts, let go of the past, release that pain, free us from the grudges and the resentment and the anger that often hold us back from moving forward and feeling more joy and feeling present to our lives. The second thing is gratitude. You know, the Dalai Lama says that gratitude cuts across that negative default mode of the mind, which only focuses on what's wrong and what isn't right, to seeing what is good, to seeing the blessings, to seeing the benefits, to seeing the joys, to seeing all the positive and wonderful things that are part of all of our lives. And there is always so much, but often when our minds are so focused on what's wrong, we take for granted or cannot see how good and wonderful and how blessed and enriched our lives are. And he said one of the greatest blessings for us is to just appreciate and be grateful for the gift of life. To be grateful that we are just alive and we have the opportunity to learn and to love and to laugh and to be present to each precious and wonderful moment. He said the most wonderful thing is to be able to be grateful for the opportunity to live, even if that opportunity is about celebrating and being in relationship, or even if that opportunity is to face a challenge, to walk through it and know that we can rise to that challenge and bring forth and learn even better things. And he said the great thing about gratitude is it gives us perspective. It expands life in a greater and more wonderful way that allows us to appreciate and acknowledge and enjoy all of the good things. You know, last week we talked about the power of acceptance. Acceptance is the ability to not fight against reality. And gratitude is the ability to embrace and enjoy what is present and before us. The third one is about learning how to own, what is ours and what is before us and what is in our lives. You know, so often one of our key behaviors is to avoid things that we don't like. You know, there are a lot of things in our lives we don't like. We wish we could take it back. We wish we could reject it. We wish we could switch it out. I think we all wish that there was like this big, there's an exchange policy and refunds at stores. You know, I bet we could do with that with some areas of our lives. I'd like to return this dysfunctional family. This is not a good, or like this career, it's not a good fit. You know, these thighs, I'd like to return them. They're not working for me. I mean, can you imagine that? Because we have lineups with thousands of people because there's stuff in our lives we don't want, we reject. We just don't want it to be a part of our lives. You know, there's so much fear that holds us back. And the truth about it is these things are challenging. They're not easy. Even with Jesus and going to Jerusalem, it was not easy for him. Listen to his own very words in the book of John, chapter 12, verses 27 to 28. It says, "Now my soul is troubled. And what shall I say? Father, save me from this hour? No. For this purpose I have come to this hour." And you remember in Gethsemane when he said, "Father, if you can, take this cup from me. But not my will, thy will be done." And basically, Jesus in both of these scriptures is saying, I'm scared. This is hard. So should I give up? No. This is the purpose for which God sent me. this is the work that I've been called here to do. This is the gift that I came here to give the world. And the fact is, as scared as we are, we have the power to override our fearful thinking that wants to shut down and run, and to literally open up and say, no, this is the reason I came. I feel like running, but I will not run, because this is the work that I came here to do. See, Jesus didn't choose to avoid it. He didn't choose to try and pass it off on someone else. He knew that this was his work to do. And sometimes we got to walk through some tough stuff. In the 23rd Psalm, it says, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Notice it doesn't say, yea, though I run through the valley as quick as I could. Yea, though I walk around it as wide as I can. Yea, do I close my eyes and just take a big leap? I mean, it doesn't say that. It says, walk through. Because the truth is, walking through Jerusalem really allowed the resurrection to happen. And sometimes we miss out on resurrection experiences. We miss out on blessings. We miss out on becoming more of who we came to be by avoiding those Jerusalem experiences that we allow to scare us and decide not to go to. And the fact is, it is our work. Everything in your life is there for you. It is there because your soul is calling you to it to allow it to help grow you. And yet we want to run from it. But the universe loves you so much that if you try to avoid a particular lesson in some way, shape, or form, it'll come back to greet you at some other place again. As Catherine Ponder said, until you move through it with grace, it'll always show up in your face. That's the spiritual version of you can run, but you can't hide. So my question for you is, what in your life right now that you don't want to face? What is it in your life that is scaring you that you want to avoid at all costs? And what is the thing that you know you're supposed to do that you haven't given yourself permission and allowed yourself to do? Because the truth is, we could choose to avoid it, but we would be cheating and robbing ourselves of our spiritual growth, and we will be cheating and robbing the people in around us and our world of the blessing we're here to give. Whatever that difficulty is your Jerusalem. And we need to follow Jesus' example and prepare ourselves for it and walk through it and allow it to bless us in great ways and allow us to be a blessing in great ways. The fourth thing is to be willing. Because it's one thing to know that that's mine, but it's a whole other thing to actually do it. Because there are some things in my life I know that are mine to do. I'm just not willing to do it. I mean, something as simple as you ever wake up and you know you want to go to the gym. You know it's a good thing to do. You know it's yours to do. You're just not willing to do it. Anybody ever have that? Or you ever say something not so nice to someone you really don't like anyway, and you know you should go apologize to them. You know that's yours to do, but you're still not willing to apologize to them? Apparently it's only me, but that's okay. That's okay. The fact is, sometimes in life we know what's the right thing, but we're unwilling, that we're resistant, and we are reluctant. And it sounds like a soft thing, but I tell you it is a big thing to be willing. Are you willing? Here's a fabulous line from a book called The Way of Transformation by Carl Fried Durkheim, and he says this: the way of transformation is to willingly open ourselves. It is not to play it safe. It is not to be closed off. It is to be open and to open ourselves fully to all the situations of life. Only the person that is willing to risk themselves and expose themselves to life, only they can have that which is indestructible in them arise. And the question is, how willing are you? To me, to be willing means to be willing to learn, to be willing to see new possibilities, be willing to grow, be willing to heal, to be willing to fail, to be willing to take action, to be willing to love, to be willing to turn to God in all things. Are you willing? In the book of Isaiah, chapter 1, verse 19, it says, if you be willing and obedient, you shall eat of the good of the land. And what it's saying is if you open yourself and be willing, good things will come forth because you will open yourself as a channel to God for greater things to be expressed through you. You know, I don't think it's any coincidence. You know, Jesus could have ridden on a stallion or something, you know, more like a king, but he rode on a donkey. And the reason is because it showed of his humility. It showed his willingness to serve, his willingness for Spirit to use him in a great and amazing way. But it required that simple but powerful thing to be willing. And the question is, how willing are you? And how willing are you willing to be? And the last one is, it said that he entered in the name of the Lord. The riding humble on this donkey, he came in the name of the Lord. He entered that difficult situation in the consciousness of God. He entered that difficult situation prayerfully, consciously, spiritually grounded, spiritually anchored. You know, he was really just totally tuned in. Think of the most difficult situation in your life. You're Jerusalem right now. The question is, would you be willing to allow yourself to be prayed up, to know that you will enter that in a consciousness of love, in a consciousness of peace, in a consciousness of healing, in a consciousness of having the intention of it being for the highest good of everyone involved, to bringing the greatest levels of benefit and blessing, to not allow fear to stop you, but to know that you have all the spiritual power and resources you need to move through that with ease and grace, and it will bless you and bless others. Because in every single situation we face, we must always take time to first anchor ourselves in prayer, to get ourselves prayed up, to get ourselves centered in God. You know, every day when the Dalai Lama wakes up, he says these words, "I am fortunate to be alive. I have a precious human life. I am not going to waste it. I am fortunate to be alive. I have a precious human life. I am not going to waste it." To me, that was Jesus' mindset, I believe, when thinking about entering Jerusalem. He knew he was fortunate to be alive. He knew he had a precious life, and he wasn't going to waste it. I've mentioned this before. My good friend Bob Kaler from Richmond Hill, Ontario, has a line that he starts some of his workshops with, and that is, on the day you were born, you were given the opportunity of a lifetime. And what are you doing with your opportunity of a lifetime? And to me, Jesus' example on Palm Sunday shows that he wanted to take advantage of his opportunity of a lifetime. He didn't want to let how hard it was scare him or stop him from doing the thing he came to do, from expressing his gifts and talents and transforming himself and allowing the world to be inspired and transformed by it. You know, Doug Abrams says that one of the things he loved about the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu is everything in their life, they seem to face every new experience with wonder and surprise and faith and gratitude and a joy, and an underlying joy of knowing that they are fortunate to be alive, that they have a precious human life, and they are not going to waste it. I am fortunate to be alive. Together. I am fortunate to be alive. Deep breath. I have a precious human life. Together. I have a precious human life. Deep breath. I am not going to waste it. Together. I am not going to waste it. Life isn't easy. There are a lot of challenges in our lives that are very tempting to want to run away from, to shy away from, to not face. But let's all make the commitment to make the best of our opportunity of a lifetime, to not waste this precious gift of life and this opportunity to live that we have been given. Let's use these incredible spiritual powers to override the negativity of the mind that want to stop us through forgiveness and gratitude, through owning what is ours to do, or being willing, and then finally entering it in the consciousness of God. Palm Sunday is the beginning of great things. And today will be the beginning of great things for all of us if we are willing to choose to step into our Jerusalem. God bless you all.